Everyone, and happy Sabbath. Welcome to our study. I know we were all praying and hopeful that the camp meeting in Martinique would be a success, and our prayers were answered. We had the live stream this morning. I must say that usually after a camp meeting and after Elder Parminder makes a presentation, in this case, he was answering 3 questions that the members had asked. I just like to stop and reflect on that and, just kind of ruminate on what's been said. But little did I know I'd be presenting after the camp meeting. So what you're going to see is some of the things that he talked about. I too was thinking about, and I'll do an in-course correction as we go along. Based on some of the things we just recently learned. And before I get started with how I developed this study, does anyone want to share anything about the camp meeting that we just experienced? Any comments or thoughts? Okay, well, oh, I'm sorry, did someone want to say something?
I just thought it seemed like he gave the most direct answers and easy to comprehend. Like he just boom, 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 laid it all
Mm-hmm.
out. No twists and turns. Everything was just, yeah. I looked at it and I go, yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah. I like that, Linda. I felt that way too. It's kind of no nonsense. Let's just get right to it. The 3 questions, and the 3 questions were, I'm sure that's what's been on all our minds at some point. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that, Linda. Anyone else want to share some of their observations? Oh, Suzanne says, great comment. Okay. Well, let me share with you how this study developed for me. It really started back in July and August when we had the camp meeting in Slovakia. And at that time, we began to learn about Revelation 17. And one of the things that Elder Parminder taught us was that, Revelation 17 is teaching us about one power, and it's in 2 parts. We have the beast and we have the woman. And the thing that really struck me was that this power, this thing, this entity in 2 parts, beast, woman, is the enemy of God. And I thought, wow, well, if it's the enemy of God, since we are in a proxy war, that means it's our enemy too. So I really wanted to explore and look more into Revelation 17, and I can really appreciate some of the comments that he made today. And if any time you want to interject or add to what I'm saying, please feel free to do so. So that was the first thing, the Slovakian camp meeting. And of course, progressively through the summer, early fall, we had all the other camp meetings. But of course, by the time we get to the camp meeting, the international camp meeting in France, we had the 5 speakers who all came together to share their thoughts and ideas about what they were talking about or speaking about over the past 8 months, or I guess it may be a year by now. And they had to come, Elder Parminder had orchestrated everything around the fact that they had to base what they taught on 5 proofs. And one of the proofs was the rise and fall of kingdoms. And so that stuck with me. So what I began to think about and research, if you will, or call back to my memory, was some of the things we've already learned. And in this study, I'm going to go over 2 structures that we learned just recently. I'm going to talk about something that Elder Tess taught us about, I guess it was about 5 years ago in 2020, before she took her sabbatical. So I want to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about something else she taught us about the world wars. And what I've titled my study on is a power struggle, or power struggle. Somewhere along, I heard Elder Parmenter talking about the power struggle that exists and how the rise and fall of nations comes through elections. And that's kind of been what our whole Sunday Law Initiative was about. So I wanted to take the idea of power struggle and liken it to, it's kind of synonymous with the Great Controversy, something that we know as Adventists, or Adventism has taught us, and of course now in this movement. So I wanted to look at the power struggle that's been going on between good and evil, between Christ and Satan. And I want to look at it in terms of some of the structures that we were taught, with a focus on the United States of America. And I was really happy to hear Elder Parmenter, as Linda said, he was very direct. He talked about one empire, one beast, one enemy, but it has different manifestations. And I really enjoyed how he talked about the metals, and then he also talked about the body parts that represent this difference. So this morning, that's what I want to do to a certain extent. I have some board work that I want to share with you. Actually, I have an additional board because I couldn't fit everything on this board. And I want to talk about this power struggle as it relates to what we've seen in the United States of America. I really enjoyed what he said about, you know, in Ellen White's writings, the Seventh Kingdom was considered to be the papacy. And we'll talk a little bit more about it when I get to the graphic. And it's not the papacy, it's the United States of America. And that's my focus, because I've just been intrigued by the way this whole thing has developed in terms of these seven kingdoms. And as we're learning, which we've been learning throughout the year as prophets, and this is a prophetic movement, we have to know the seven kingdoms, and we have to know them well. Because now we're faced with the end result of Satan's final surge, if you will, onto the world. So what I'd like to start out with, like I said, I have two boards. I have screen share, and I have 3 documents, which are really just kind of my notations that I wrote down to kind of guide our conversation. And there are 3 of them. And when I have 3, I usually ask Elaine to help me with sharing the 2 of them. But I had a real busy week and I didn't get a chance to send those to her. So if you bear with me, we'll try to do the screen share. If it doesn't work, I have everything and I'll send it to Elaine and she can post it for us. So let's start. I hope you can see the board. I was careful. I used a rectangular board that's not as sturdy as my other board. Uh-oh. Now let's see. Okay, now it's following me and not the board. Okay, let's see how we do this. Okay. Let me do it this way. This is the board. Can you see that at all? Maybe I'll stand. Oh. Okay. I don't know. Is that going to help or not? All right. What the board says, I'll just read it to you so you can see. It says Revelation 12, 13, and 17, the beast is the same. So when we talk about this power struggle, we're looking at those chapters in Revelation are all speaking about the same beast. Now, we learned in the camp meetings that there were two views of the chapters. It was panoramic and dispensational. And the first graphic, I hope you can see that. I'm not sure if you can. Is
Did you
the
change,
one where,
Marcia,
huh?
did you change a setting in your video that makes your camera zoom in and out like that? I don't know. I've
No,
never seen that
I
happen.
didn't.
So
I know.
um
And you know what? Uh,
I've seen cameras
Christina,
follow somewhat, but and try to adjust, but not to zoom in and zoom out.
yeah, Christina told me the same thing. Well, I did have this computer worked on, so I don't know what all happened. But
Okay.
I don't know if you can see the board or not. Can you see it
Well, you
at
had it
all?
lined up there earlier when you were in
I
front of
did,
it,
and
but
then it moved.
yeah, I don't know. I've not seen that before.
Yeah, I haven't either. Well, it's a little glitch, but the first graphic is just the one he showed, 1, 2, and 3 from Isaiah 46:10. You have the past, the present, and the future. And the past is too far away. You're not going to get the information we need if we're going to understand Bible prophecy. So he talked about, in order to understand the end of the world, which we're at now, the future, we really need to look and be in the present. And that spoke loudly to me in that we have to be in the present. We're a present truth movement. We have to know the methodology. We have to know all the things that we're supposed to know in order to be a successful prophetic movement. So he talked about a panoramic model and a dispensational model. So that was the first graphic. And we learned that early on. And I noticed in the, excuse me, Guadalupe camp meeting, he's kind of modified this now. And he's really just doing the present and the future, or he did 4, 5, and 6. So he's doing some different things. And then the second graphic is this one, where you have time of the end, 1798. You have kingdom number 5, you have number 6, and then down at the bottom, if you'll recall, he had 1989 for the time of the end. So we have the 2 time of the ends. And what we were to learn from this, dispensationally, this is kind of a dispensational graphic. The 5th kingdom was the sea beast that we read about in Revelation 13. And of course, we know the sea beast was Europe. It was the old world. It was the 10 European kings. We know that the Jesuits were controlling everything through the papal church. And of course, we know that a group of people decided that they did not want to be ruled by a king or have a pope tell them how to worship. So they took a trip to a land called America and decided that they wanted a free right to worship God the way they wanted to, and they wanted a different form of government. So we get to the 6th kingdom, or the 6th, it's a head, and it's called the Lamb head. And one of the things that I did I was self-correcting as the camp meeting was going on. He talked about this lamb being good, no beast, no image of the beast. The beast was dead. And this is the United States when it was in its good phase. And I just kind of added that in because he brought that up quite a bit in our talk, in his camp meeting discussion. So we have the 6th kingdom, United States of America, and that was good, even though, and I liked what he did when he said, it's still Satan's work, but this was an anomaly. We got the United States of America, we got all those founding fathers who devised a constitution, a Declaration of Independence, and it was just a new form of democracy because they didn't like what had happened in the old world in Europe. So then we come down to the time of the end, and this is where our information, our message starts. And we have the sixth kingdom. It's the earth kingdom, but now it's going to speak as a dragon. And we know that that started in 1989. And the next part of this board, and I'm scared to move because I don't want to do anything that you can't see. This is what Elder Tess gave us about 5 years ago. And I know some of you can pull up things really quickly. This I did from my own notes and watching her video again. I think it was in March of 2020. She talked about the rise of 6 presidents through the electoral process. And at that time, when she was teaching, we hadn't had Biden and we didn't have the Trump administration on a second administration. So this shows the power struggle of how America went from a lamb to a dragon, from being good to being bad. And here at number 7, and we talk about that a little later, here it is perfecting Satan's idea of what should happen on this earth at the end of the world. So I want to think about 1989 because I can't move. Just let your eyes go over there. We had Ronald Reagan as president. And one of the purposes of this study was to show that the same things that brought Ronald Reagan into office also brought Donald Trump into office. And she talked about that. And we all know from history and from our personal experiences that we had 3 movements: the civil rights movement, the feminist movements, first wave, second wave, third wave, and we had the LGBTQ movement. And I think that was started in Stonewall. So we had those 3 movements. And as a result of those 3 movements, we had Christianity began to inject itself into politics. And if you'll recall, we learned about Jerry Falwell and the moral majority. So at the very beginning of our message and our movement, we have Ronald Reagan, a Republican, brought in by the moral majority to remedy the bad effects of the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, and the LGBTQ. Now we also, and Elder Parmenter talked about this morning, with Ronald Reagan, he also had an alliance with Pope John Paul II. And we remember that history. And that was an attempt to destroy Russia, or the King of the South. And we know that that attempt failed for the papacy. And as we were told this morning, the whole idea of the papacy is null and void. That's not going to happen. Your eye has to be on our country because that's where everything's going to happen. After Ronald Reagan's administration, we had the administration of another Republican, George Herbert Walker Bush, the father, and he brought on the Gulf War, if you'll remember, in 1991, and he had Colin Powell and Schwarzenegger, and that's where I think that Schwarzkopf, or all those generals fighting in that Gulf War. And then, of course, we had a break. We had Bill Clinton, who was a Democrat. He came in. And then we had the son, George Walker Bush, and he was a Republican, and he got us involved in the Iraq War, which was in 2003, where they claimed there was weapons of mass destruction there in Iraq. Then, of course, we have the two-term presidency of Barack Hussein Obama was a Democrat. And when I want you to think about the power struggle that we're talking about, how did the Republicans manage this power struggle? Well, I think if you think about it, think about your own experience. We all lived through this. It was probably Obama's presidency that turned the tide, so much so that we have Trump now. Because if you recall, when he was elected or inaugurated in 2009, excuse me, soon thereafter, the Tea Party arose. And you had all of these different protests, if you will. I think we can all agree that his administration was plagued with walking a racial and politically charged tightrope. I mean, he got it from both sides. And I also want you to remember all the young African-American boys, young men that died during his administration. 2012, I'm going to split this down just for a second. 2012, you had Trayvon Martin in Florida. You had Tamir Rice in 2014 in Cleveland, Ohio. In 2015, I know you all remember, I think it was in June, South Carolina, Dylan Roof went in and killed people in a Bible study in Mother Emanuel Baptist Church. And then, of course, in 2014, you had the strangulation of Eric Garner on Staten Island. You had Freddie Gray in Baltimore. So you have this series of unfortunate deaths of these young African-American men because people are upset that we have an African-American president. I mean, I don't know if people want to speak honestly, but that was what was happening. And all this racially charged chaos led to demography, voting access, gerrymandering. There were people that were happy about Obama's presidency, but there were people who were livid, and they wanted to take the power away from the Democrats. And we get Trump 2 times. And he's a Republican, or was. I don't know what he's saying now. And both he and Reagan were actors. One was in the movies, and one was in reality TV. So that's the power struggle in that way. Now, the next thing.
Hey, Marcia, I was just going
Yeah,
to say, yes, go ahead and put it down so that you don't have to hold it, and we'll put the picture in the forum and try
yeah.
to figure out why you're zooming in and zooming out later. Sorry about
Well,
that.
you know what? I'm getting a new computer after the holiday, so
Okay.
we won't do this anymore. But
Okay.
right,
Go ahead and
right
go
now we
forward.
just I'm so sorry. But
No, it's okay.
yeah,
Go ahead and go forward.
I'm getting a new one, and I'm gonna use my Mac next time too with the whiteboard thing. I'm gonna learn how to do that, so I won't have to go through this and put you guys through this. I'm sorry. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit is the whole idea of the power struggle as it relates to the world wars. I think we remember, let me just stand up a little bit so you can see this. Elder Tess talked about World War I plus World War II equals World War III. And of course, we know that the world wars, everybody knows we had world wars, that's in the history books. But for us, it's also a prophetic event, a prophetic model, because we know that the agency of Satan, they cannot create. They can only copy. So, the world wars are Satan's, the agency of evil's way of trying to garner power and control on this earth. And I'm trying to see if I can get this right. World War I, Elder Tess taught us, is equivalent or was related to the Diadochi War. Now, the third Diadochi War. I'm not going to go into that because you can always reference Elder Tess's material. And I think Lily Wan did a very good review of the third Diadochi War. But what we want to think about when we think about these world wars is the rise and fall of nations, the rise of the King of the North in each instance. And I'm just going to pull out World War I as an example in a few minutes. World War II, we're probably going to hear a lot about because of the Sunday law speakers, the three that are still going to be teaching us. Because the whole idea of Pyrrhus, his campaign, his Alpha campaign in Macedonia, his Omega campaign in Italy, all have to do with Pyrrhic wars. And that's where you get the famous Quintus Fabius Maximus Gergus and the battle, the battle that killed Pyrrhus, which was Argos. And you hear the dates of 272 BC and 273 BC. So that has to do with World War II. We're not going to get into that. And of course, World War III, the other graphic that I showed you when we talked about George W. Bush and the Iraq War, it's my understanding, and I certainly can stand corrected, but from what I learned from Elder Tess, and we'll talk about it when I do the screen share, I believe that was the beginning of World War III, but I could be mistaken. And I can stand corrected with no problem. Now, the third Diadochi War coincides with World War I. The third Diadochi War is a study in itself. You have Eumenes, you have Demetrius, you have Python, you have the Silver Shields, and it talks about elephants, which is an information war. And Elder Parminder today in our Martinique meeting talked about how if you don't want to be seduced or taken away from what we're learning, you have to have the right stream or be on the right stream of information. It's very, very important. So that was kind of like a side step to that. But I wanted to show you when we think about power struggle, that we're thinking about, of course, the great controversy, the war between Christ and Satan. And we're thinking about the King of the North versus the King of the South. That's how it manifests here in the earthly realm. And when we think about World War I, which I just extracted as an example to show the power struggle, we've got the sphere of influence with Serbia. And then, of course, it was a war, World War I, was the King of the North, was Austria-Hungary. In World War II, we know that the King of the North was Germany. And that's a whole nother study, so I don't want to muddle the waters here. Then we have King of the South was Russia, and their sphere of influence was Serbia. And a terrorist group arose called the Black Hand, and we had the same thing happen in the Third Diadochi War, which led to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, which started the World War I. And I just wanted to show you that whole Bosnian crisis was 1908 to 1914. And World War III, the Middle East crisis, we had the Gulf War under George Herbert Walker Bush Sr., also known as Desert Storm. And then we had the 2003 Iraq War with Saddam Hussein. And of course, they claimed there were weapons of mass destruction there in Iraq. So that is kind of the story of how this power struggle has manifested itself on this earth. Again, it takes us back to Revelation 17. It's one power. It's a beast, it's a woman, and it's the enemy of God. So what I want to do now is just show you, I think I have all the graphics out of the way. I want to try to show you screen share, and I'm hoping it works. If not, you'll get the notes. I'll send them to Elaine. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to try, so bear with me. Okay, I think I see it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Okay, oh, it all popped up together. Okay, yeah. I don't know how to separate it, so let's just go with what we have. Our topic is power struggle, and it's based on, like I told you, what we learned early on about Revelation 17, and of course in France at the International Camp Meeting.
Hey,
Sunday
Marcia,
law. Oh,
Marcia,
yes.
I
Yeah.
think if you click on view, I think that's where Christine can correct me if I'm wrong. If you click on view at the top, there's going to be an option that you can take it to one page.
Oh, I can? Okay, thank you, Elaine.
Yeah.
Where would I find that one
One page.
page?
See where it says Zoom and 100%? Right next to that it says one page.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There you go. And you
Elaine,
might need to still enlarge
wonderful.
it. That's okay. You might still need to enlarge it a little bit.
Okay,
Zoom
well,
in.
if I hope I can get back to the rest, but anyway, thank you so
No,
much.
you'll just have to scroll down and it'll be there.
Okay.
But if you could
Okay.
increase the size, I'm sure some of them need to, if you do hit the zoom and zoom in on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Did that do it or no?
No, hit the zoom on the left, to the left of
Oh,
it,
okay. I see. Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah. 200? You
increase
want me
it.
to do,
That's
you
good,
want me to
probably. It
do
might be a little too big, but that's good.
200?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, please.
Oh, who said that? Okay.
Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Hi, Alyssa. Okay, I hope I can do this, Alyssa. If I can, I'm so sorry. Okay. You know what,
Just
Elaine?
click in that 200 circle
I am. Oh,
and
yeah.
click
Okay,
OK.
I did. Okay, I
There you
did.
go. And now you'll
Oh,
be able to just scroll and it'll all be there. Just scroll down as you
oh,
read.
thank you so much, Elaine. Is that
You're
better,
welcome.
Alyssa? I don't know if she heard me. Okay.
It is. It can still be bigger for me,
Oh,
but that's
I
okay.
can't. Okay. Okay. So when we think about the power struggle, we know that Sunday law, it has to do with the election cycle. And I guess we're still thinking about the election cycle in terms of primaries, the, what do we call them? The conventions, the actual election, which happened November 5th, July 18th, January 20th, and all the other pieces of it. But it's about an election cycle. And I know with this new initiative we have that they're planning, we'll learn more about that. So the worldwide rise and fall of nations through elections, the democratic process, has gotten us here right now to the seventh kingdom. And I think the important thing that I extracted from all this is Trump is the face of the Sunday law, whether it was July 18th or November 5th, that this is what we have. And we're at the end of the world, and this is the last generation. And I also was really interested in the fact that we see prophecy being fulfilled before our eyes right now. God versus Satan is the great controversy. I'm using power struggle because everybody knows what a power struggle is. I mean, we live in a world strife with power struggles. I mean, even our competitive sports, you see it everywhere. Revelation 17 also learned that it is about the rise and fall of nations. And we got some more information today on that, which, you know, he was saying that Revelation 17 is trying to teach us that this beast is a bad animal. And I thought that was interesting that he just brought that up today. Now, if I were able, I would have made a lovely graphic of the woman riding these beasts. And I just put them kind of in a panoramic view was kind of what my thinking, that we had Babylon. And of course, the study this morning went through this so perfectly clear. And I am going to make a course correction as we get further down because I just learned this today. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, where we had a Caesar, and Greek religion. But I know in some of our studies that we've had with Elaine, we were talking about the woman's not seen here. We have the beast or the state, but actually these kings were king priests, or they had a divine portion to them too. So the woman is really on these. If we could have a cute little graphic showing the woman on a beast, we would have that all throughout the seven kingdoms. And we know that pagan Rome had Caesar with a Greek religion. So it was all paganism. And I thought the interesting thing, and I thought about this when Elder Parmenter was teaching us, he's saying now that, we've been thinking it's papal Rome, but it's really still pagan Rome. And of course, I had a notion of that when I was studying this because I put Caesar, because he was the ruling power, but then he was usurped in terms of a religious leader called the Pope in Christianity. But I know we'll probably get more information as we continue. But from what I understand, and I would be really interested in what you're thinking, that it's pagan Rome, pagan Rome, pagan Rome all the way through now. Because we know that the papacy has nothing to do, that whole, what really struck me, if you would just permit me to editorialize a little bit, was the fact that he reiterated the fact that what we learned for so many years about the threefold union, the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet, or Catholicism, spiritualism, and apostate Protestantism, is no longer useful for us anymore. And that the Pope or the papacy is not going to have anything to do with whatever we're going to be going through in this seventh kingdom drama. And then, of course, we have the USA is the sixth kingdom with no image of the beast. When it first started, it was like a lamb, no image of the beast. And of course, now, and we talked a little bit about it, I tried to bring it home with the graphic that I used from Elder Tessa's study years ago, that we have the seventh kingdom now, which is the enemy of God, and it's in two phases. It's a woman and it's a beast. And what I like about what we've been learning, we learned early on that the woman was a church. And we know that, Revelation 12, that's God's church. Revelation 17, that's Satan's church. I mean, that was kind of Adventism 101. But now we see that it's the United States of America that is going to represent the perfection of Satan's kingdom. And I think that is hard to understand, knowing that we were all born in this country and in a democracy, and to see what's happening it's pretty amazing. So I'd also like to show this one in my thinking. Since 1776 and 1798, the US government and SDA have consistently failed in their missions. And I know we've been talking, and it's said that the Democratic Party failed, but I would like to suggest to you that it wasn't just the Democratic Party, the whole system failed. I and that's just my thought. And of course, I'm interested in what you think. Um, again, this vertical outline of these kingdoms was just for me to see and to share with you that none of these 1 through 6, you know, and he talked about this today, heads, mountains, kingdoms. I really like the way he made that apparent, are fit for purpose. None of them could fulfill their job description. So now what we have in the 7th kingdom is a beast, excuse me, that represents Satan's perfection. And it's the 7th kingdom. And we now are living in that time. And something else that, you know, we've had lots of studies on what is prophecy and what is morality. I just wanted to say that as I was thinking about this, I understand that every waymark is in fact a moral issue as well. And I think as we study and learn more together, we can see how immoral so many things are now. And also, you know, based on what we just learned, course correction, if you will, because when I did this, again, I have number 5 is papal Rome. And, you know, our new learning is that it's really pagan Rome. And I don't want to be presumptuous because Elder Parmenter hasn't taught this, but I'm thinking the USA is Rome also. And it's probably pagan too, under the guise of an evangelical Christian dome. But I really liked how he really emphasized that the number 7 is a bad kingdom. He kept saying that. And I also liked, I'm trying to think what I wanted to share with you about the 7th kingdom. That this is Satan's masterpiece. I mean, I'm just astounded by that we're living in that, and that this Republican conservative ideology, if you will, has turned into this. What I'm going to share with you next is taken from a study that Elder Parmenter did about 6 years ago. And I know some of you, like I said, can pull up these things so well. But this is from what I learned back in that time. And he called it revenge, how the U.S. Conservative Party exacted revenge. And yeah,
Marcia?
go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning, Marcia. Happy Sabbath.
Hi, Susan.
My voice is a bit weak, so I don't use it much, but
Well, we're just glad to have you.
I'm just grateful to be
God bless you.
with
So
all.
glad to hear from you. Okay, dear, go ahead. Take your time.
Well, you had mentioned that you wanted to make an adjustment but maybe it's not on the document, maybe it's on the board, but you're in between documents, and the one that you were just talking about of the 7 kingdoms is where you would want to make that change, because you have it marked as pagan and then papal. And
Yes.
we got clarity this morning that it's pagan.
Right.
That's all. I just wanted to.
Oh, thank you, sweet. Yes, and I appreciate you and so glad you're with us. You're absolutely right. And that was the adjustment. If I was really good and could do some stuff with this, but I don't want to make it. I just wanted to tell you that, yeah, number 5 should be pagan Rome. You're right. Thank you. And he also talked about, I know what I wanted to share that I was fascinated with. He talks about the head, the chest, the stomach, the legs, and the feet. You know, and those feet are where you get the iron and clay. The mixture of the church and the state. But yeah, thank you, Susan. That's right. That would be the correction. Okay, so now this study was
One more thing. I think we're not going to be church with the clay. I think that might be a surprise for us, but that's just my thought.
Well, you know what? We're always willing to get a surprise, and I wouldn't be surprised either. But he did say today, he just did talk about iron and clay. But yeah, we may not want to make any attachments. I appreciate that. But in the old way of thinking, you think of clay being church, right? Like Isaiah talks about the potter and the clay.
Taught.
Yeah, but we know that that's what's so wonderful about this message. It's ever growing, it's ever changing. And what he said at the very beginning really struck a chord with me, in that he said, you know, Satan's consolidating the agencies of evil, and the attack is connected to information. So we have to be so aware of what, you know, happens when we're in information warfare. And he talked about Revelation 17 being drunkenness, and Revelation 13 being deception. And you think about how many people, and we know this because we have them in our own family, we have them in the groups that we socialize with, we have them in our neighborhoods. These are people who they really think they're right and what they're doing is good. And they think they're doing God's work if you really talk to them. So he said the deceptions, miracles are not supernatural, excuse me. They're connected to information. So that should make us all,
Yes.
you know, our antennas should go up, because
And it's going to be harder in this dispensation, but we have no worries because God is going to give us the clarity needed. And the information is so, it absorbs your mind so much that that keeps your mind and your thoughts healthy. And it's so interesting how, but if we dabble, like he mentioned, those that might go on enchanted ground to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, for instance.
Or the world.
Well, yes, even thinking, oh, just a little bit won't hurt. I remember that one of the pastors always said, is a little arsenic okay? You know what I mean? And so we have to heed that advice, take it to heart, you know?
That's right. That's right. I mean, I think, and I like what Linda said, because she observed what I was thinking about when it was very direct. Now, you know, he talked about our protection, our safety is to remain in the movement and be engaged and interested. And that prevents seduction. So I think we're being forewarned. I too believe, Susan, that there'll be other surprises that we're not quite thinking might happen.
Media right now, when this movement did the French camp meeting, that was when I was beginning my treatments. So I had treatments during the day. So I was in real time, if you follow me. And when I got to see the first presentation, that when it uploaded, he was talking about real time. And I was actually in real time watching the news, and I noticed that Israel had control of the propaganda of the prisoners exchange with the Hamas deal that they just recently did, right? And all your regular news media outlets, even MSNBC, used cameras at the actual Israel location, used a approved of journalist that was approved by Israel to give only the information to our audiences here on all the mainstream, even the media outlets we have been taught to trust have been are controlled. And I thought it was just fascinating because it was happening in real time, and Elder Parmenter was presenting real time, and we know that in the French Revolution, right? And France and the role it played. And so now the movement is in France, and the real time was shifted, in my perspective, right here in the USA. And I saw it happening live with my own eyes, and I just couldn't get over, because it was like we had switched from, this sounds a little parabolic, but I don't know how else to describe it. It sounds a little bit like from Alice in Wonderland to Behind the Looking Glass, the second one, because everything now was reversed. If you follow what I'm trying to say, the movement was in France, but the real time was being given us in real time, while I was in real time in the USA, where now the USA's role was what France's role was. It was just so spectacular. I hope that made sense, because I think we are really going to have to practice the sifting skills more than ever. And I'll say one more thing. I hope I haven't monopolized, but it just came to my mind.
Oh, you are fine.
Thank you. During that, when that was happening, I think it was somewhere in the beginning of October. I don't have the date clear, but you all know, I believe, what I'm talking about. And I prayed to God. Now, I know it might not be possible, but I still asked God to please protect my algorithms, because I was beginning then, during that time, to try to find some books and some information, and I wanted in real, genuine, fact-based, traditional, good old-fashioned journalism, where they're on the ground, they actually go, they actually get the details, but they've been purged. These truth tellers have been purged from the main media, because they have not cooperated. They don't believe it's correct. They see the media's complicity. They either resigned or were forced out. So they've turned to independent areas to share. But I was so untrustworthy of myself, but yet I realized God wants me to embrace my agency. He wants us all to embrace our agency. And he wants us all to understand we've been given all the tools. Will we make mistakes? Yes. That's how you learn. But you have to try, even if you make mistakes, because you can't master anything unless you practice. But because I was still timid, and I was afraid I might, because some of these truth tellers, they have a lot of haters. So there is a lot of information about them that says, oh, they're just conspiracy theorists. So I think it's very important that we realize there are things as conspiracy theorists, but I also am noticing that many of the conspiracy theories that were shed far and wide and that people still cling to were used as a cover. And I can almost prove it from some books I have, to cover up the Epstein case, because we have now learned both sides were in it. But I don't know if any of you remember back when Hillary was running, they tried, and Russia was using the information war and blah, blah, blah. And they made Hillary out to be like a child sex trafficker, child murderer, that said she sacrificed children and all that junk, right? And they assigned her to the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, and all kinds of other myths and disinformation and lies have been promulgated out there to keep people afraid to read some of these independent journalists who've been tarnished. Their reputations have been tarnished, and they've been accused of being conspiracy theorists because the other side doesn't want us to read and see their detailed documentation, because they have thoroughly referenced and documented their research. So they prove it. And so I think that is all part of where we are going to need to be cautious and careful and practice our sifting skills and not be so full out trusting. And even MSNBC just changed their name to MS Now. And then I also saw Rachel Maddow at the funeral of Cheney, who's a warmonger, a horrible person. And she was like in the third row, invited guest behind all the dignitaries. And I thought, why did they invite her? It even made me question her. Does she tell truth? Yes. But is she ignoring that Israel story? Yes. And so this is just putting it out there because I just recently learned it. Not trying to alarm anyone, but I do believe that is how we could possibly be deceived. So I pray for my algorithms that God will help keep those in control, and maybe God can do that. So anyway, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Susan. And we're so thankful that you are, having a good recovery. So we wish God's continued blessings upon you. Thank you so much for using so much to share with us. And I know we all agree. And if anyone else wants to comment, please feel free to do so. But we know, and Elder Tess brought this to our attention years and years ago, that there's two streams of information. And we have to remember that. And, we are up against a formidable foe. And of course, we know that God has all the power there is. And I think that what I heard Elder Parmenter saying today, and he also talked about it in the French camp meeting, is that we have to accomplish a work during some very complicated times. And you mentioned agency. If we don't have the right agency, meaning being filled with God's righteousness, we're not going to be able to do the work. And I think you brought that up in what you were sharing, and you were talking about your algorithms. Well, you could look at that spiritually too. There's spiritual algorithms that we all may be supposed to be in tune with. And I don't know how that works, but I know that what Elder Parmenter shared today, he said our only protection is the message that comes at the time of the end. And that happened 30 some odd years ago. And that's why it's imperative to know the methodology.
But it continues to grow in light. So it's not a new message. It just continues to develop.
Right.
So we have greater and greater understanding and vision of what's occurring.
Well, he talked about that, talking about the increase of knowledge. That's part of it. You're absolutely right. And he made that a point to share with us at this camp, at the Martinique camp meeting. So in thinking about finishing this up, the revenge part that Elder Parmenter talked about years ago, he looked at the U.S. Conservative Party and how different things were exacted. And, we all have our ideas and concepts. I'm just giving you what I learned 6 years ago. It may not even be as accurate as, things change. We just talked about this as a fluid message. But in 1989, you had the U.S. Conservative Party, and the whole idea was the USA versus the USSR, King of the North versus King of the South. And we know from studies that the King of the South's job function was to stop the United States from becoming a unilateral, monolithic power. So this is all about power struggle. In 2001, we all remember 9/11 and the U.S. Conservative Party. Remember George W. Bush went before the Congress or somebody and talked about how, you know, you're either for us or against us. And it was the USA versus Islam. In 2014, the revenge was the Republicans versus the Democrats. And I talked a little bit about that when I talked about the Obama administration and how that was just, you know, a political and racially charged tightrope that he had to walk on because you know, a lot of people were not happy. You know, that the narrative that had been spoken about for so many years about why Black people had to be enslaved and all the other racial untruths were shown to be totally a lie. And people had a hard time accepting that. So you get this, the rise of Donald Trump. And we can all remember when he came down on that escalator in July of 2015 to announce that he would be running for president. And a lot of people didn't think it was true or real. And of course, we know what happened with the first administration. Then in 2019, the revenge was the conservatives versus equality. And that's where I believe, and I could be wrong, because I wasn't part of the movement in terms of, you know, being with you all. I believe there was a switch in the movement. I could be wrong, from conservative to liberal. And then, of course, we've learned that the Sunday law is about equality. And we've either passed that test or we haven't. And, you know, that's what God is about. Record keeping and record reading and all of that. But now, as I understand it, and I would really appreciate what you think, it's now about the seventh kingdom. And we have to really understand, and this goes to what Suzanne was sharing with us just a bit ago, we really have to understand what's happening around us, because it's not going to be fire and sparkles coming down from heaven. These people are going to be doing some miraculous information war. And it's going to look good. You know, the Bible says that Satan comes as an angel of light. And if we don't get ourselves together and really understand what we're about, and I think that's what I got this morning, that Elder Parmenter is saying, look, there's no more time left. You're either here or you're not. And I think that is the message that we know, because we've got to understand the seventh kingdom, because it's the enemy of God. And I kind of started our talk today off with, that's what really struck me when I started doing this study in the summer, that he said it's one power, it has two parts, it's a woman and it's a beast, but it's the enemy of God. And that really struck something in me. And I thought, wow, well, if it's the enemy of God, it's my enemy too. It's our enemy. And we have to really be aware of that. And I like what Susan said about, you know, he made it a point, you can't dabble with the world or the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I like that, because, you know, we have relatives, we have loved ones in the church. You know, we live in this world, so we're surrounded by everything, but we have to be very, very careful, because there are booby traps, I believe. And I'm thinking spiritually, not physically. So with this, an information war, and we've been talking about it, we talk about the great controversy. I titled this study Power Struggle, because those words really rang true to me, a power and a struggle, great controversy, information war, king of the North versus king of the South, USA and Russia in an ongoing war over spheres of influence. And we know the Middle East has been a point, Afghanistan's been a point, Iraq, Eastern Europe, and we've seen that throughout the world wars. The historical context would be, it all started with Alexander the Great and that whole idea of that Greek Empire. And then after he died, you had, I think, the greats, you had 22 or more generals that were involved, and you had the Diadochi Wars. You had all these pirate wars, all these people vying for power. And then, of course, just words that we all learned as we were studying these things: the king of the north, Seleucus, Antigonus, Demetrius, the papacy. And now, of course, we are confronted with the United States of America. And as I understand it, that's the king of the north that we're involved with now. King of the south, we know it started out with Ptolemy years ago, Egypt. Pyrrhus, we had a lot of Elder Tess talked a lot about Pyrrhus, and now Elder Terry has brought in Pyrrhus, and with the Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgis and Argos and 272 BC or 273 BC. We have the United Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, which is of course gone, and also Russia. We have a progressive relationship between history and the world wars. I just wanted to reiterate kind of what I had on that little board that I was trying to hold up. I hope you could see it. That World War I coincides with the Third Diadochi War. And as I remember Elder Tess teaching me, or us, excuse me, that was the period between 1989 and 2014. And of course, we know 2014 was a Sunday law. World War II was the Fourth Diadochi War. And from what I understand, and of course, I'm pulling back on years and years of studies and thinking and trying to recall that World War III was 2003 through 2019. And that's just my thinking. And of course, we can always have conversations around that and studies around that. In 2021, Panem is the defeat of the King of the South. And again, these were just my notes so I could stay clear. The four battles that I really enjoyed that Elder Tess taught us was 2016, Ipsus, Heraclea was 2018, Asculum was 2019, and Beneventum was 2021. And of course, we know depending on what story we're telling, Asculum could become Panem, and Beneventum could become, I'm sorry, is Raphia and Beneventum. Am I getting that right, or I'm confused?
Yes, that one was right.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And then Beneventum was also Panem, 2021. So there's so many things to think about and remember. And of course, I just wanted to say, that the whole idea of what I shared above, when this Trump rose to power, and of course, you had all these tea parties, and you had Steve Bannon, you had Sessions, Jeff Sessions, and you had Stephen Miller, and that whole group getting all of these things together to create the perfect storm to give the world a Trump with Make America Great Again. And of course, in 2016, we had the election, and I learned from Elder Tess that Putin helped Trump win that election. We learned about Cambridge Analytica. He talked about so many things related to that. And at that time, there was a Trump and Putin collusion. But of course, we remember that in 2020, was it 2022, February? I think it was February 2022, Putin invades Ukraine. But the whole object was to destroy the three branches. This collusion between Trump and Putin was to destroy the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. In 2018, the alliance falls apart, and the King of the South has success. 2019, the King of the South is successful. And then by 2021, the King of the South begins to fall. And of course, we've had different studies, and I'm sure many of you will give other studies about, the fact that the King of the South did not live up to its job function. We are now in a unilateral authoritarian world. Russia had a prophetic role to fulfill and they failed. The king of the, that's just reiterating what I just said. So, that's kind of how this study evolved. And of course, it's always evolving and we're always learning. But I think the takeaway for me is the safety is in the message and in the organization. We've had several studies about what it means to be in this movement and what a blessing it is. And it's a safety net for all of us. And we all have a responsibility. Susan mentioned agency. In order to fulfill our mission, we're going to be the agents of God. I mean, we are the proxy warriors for God. So it's a big responsibility. It takes a lot, but it's a power struggle. And that's what I'd like to share today. And thank you for your patience with my board. I'm so sorry about that. Elaine, did you want me to pray or what?
Sure, go ahead.
You want me to?
Sure.
Okay. Dear God in heaven, how great thou art. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be together during these sacred Sabbath hours. Thank you for your love and protection and for all the wonderful things that you give your people. May we continue to be steadfast in our zeal and love for you and for this work that you have given us to do. We ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Elaine, I can't share